Well, up here on the Illustrator, I chose this graphic of coming home. It's sort of the idea of it. And that's because of a story I heard once from a friend who was a camp counselor. And he was asking his cabin, what is God like? What does it feel like to know God in the world? And one camper said, God is the feeling I have when I come home and my mom gives me a hug. I thought that was a beautiful way to kind of frame our understanding here this morning, because today is Mother's Day, after all. And what I want to confess first and foremost is that over the years I've learned that this is a very tricky day to be a preacher. Some people do expect me to acknowledge this holiday, so I guess it's good that I'm saying all of this right now. But others, rightfully so, struggle with this day for a variety of reasons. Maybe because they've lost their mother, or they're having trouble conceiving, or some people are estranged from their mothers, or some mothers are estranged from their children. It should all just be a simple holiday, but like so many things in life, this is far more complicated. So yes, it's Mother's Day, and as you can see, for a variety of reasons, I'm not positive how you feel about that. But what I want you to know is that at its core, this day, this holiday, was originally intended to be a day to celebrate the care and compassion that mothers so often offer. I did some research, see, and this past week I learned that Mother's Day was started by Anna Jarvis in the early 1900s. Anna started this holiday because she wanted to honor her mother, who she witnessed caring for soldiers all throughout the American Civil War. Care, compassion, and service to others is what this day seeks to celebrate. And care, compassion, and service happen to be the characteristics that Jesus hopes that we all will develop, mothers or not. The gospel reading that I just read for you was really confusing, and that's because it's a prayer that Jesus is offering during his last meal with his disciples. It's kind of hard to preach on someone else's prayer, but I'm going to do my best. And you see, in that prayer, Jesus is praying that his disciples will continue in his ways of care and compassion and service to others. Jesus is praying that even after his death and resurrection and ascension, that they'll carry his mission forward. But Jesus doesn't just pray here for his disciples to continue in his ways. No, he also prays for their protection. He asks God to protect the disciples, to ground them in truth, to keep them united as one. It sounds kind of like a prayer a parent might offer for their child. I think most parents hope that their children will be protected and grounded in God's truth and united with a good community of friends. You see, the overall point I'm trying to make here is that Jesus has always treated his disciples like a loving parent. And when we start to see Jesus through this lens, it really changes the way you understand his words and his actions. If Jesus is like a loving parent, then his teachings and his commandments aren't just arbitrary rules that he's instructing us to follow. No, if Jesus is our loving parent, then his teachings and commandments are instructions that he's giving us so that we can mature and grow. Let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. I tell my kids all the time to put their shoes away, but they leave them out just like this. I don't do this because I want to lord my power over them. Oh, look what I can do. I can tell you to put your shoes away. No, I tell them to put their shoes away so the next morning when they're rushing out to the bus stop, they know where to find their shoes. Another example. Growing up, I would sometimes forget to do my math homework until the very last minute. And can you believe this? My parents would refuse to allow me to just pull out a calculator to quickly finish my procrastinated homework. I had to do it the right way because, I've learned, my parents wanted me to learn the importance of time management and hard work. You see, parenting isn't about forming unnecessary boundaries and controlling others. Even though it might feel like that to a child at times, no, parenting sometimes means giving instructions and setting limits in order to guide children to a more mature way of living. Jesus wants to guide his children into a better way of living. In the gospel reading, Jesus prays that our joy would be made complete, and all of his commands and all of his actions and instructions beforehand were given to us so that we might grow into a way of life that is joyful and complete. During his last meal, Jesus prays for this because he knows how strong the messages of evil are in the world around us. Multiple times in that prayer in John 17, Jesus seems almost worried about leaving his disciples alone in the world. Just like a loving parent, he's concerned that the messages and the attitudes that his disciples will encounter could have a destructive effect on their ability to live well. And don't we know that this is all still true today? No matter how hard we might try as parents, no matter how hard our parents may have tried with us, there's still so much in this life that can pull us off course. We make sinful decisions. We choose to cheat rather than work honorably. We disparage those who are different than us rather than seeking to understand. We choose to build up and trust in our own ego rather than trusting in God. We choose paths of deceit and pride and lust and greed rather than the paths that Jesus revealed to us. As I tell my kids all the time, life is hard. Even with loving parents and good intentions, life is hard. And we as human beings can be so easily susceptible to bad decisions in this life, to choices that deep down we know won't lead to a joyful and abundant life, and yet they are choices that we seem to make again and again and again. But this is why we need a God who will deal with us like a loving parent. We're a people prone to making mistakes and bad choices. And if all God ever did was respond with condemnation and wrath, how could we possibly move forward? Thankfully, though, God is like a loving parent. We mess up, and rather than ridicule or judge, God reaches out with forgiveness and compassion and love. There's a strange line. There are many strange lines in that prayer that Jesus offered, but I'm focused particularly on the last one, where he says, I sanctify myself so that my disciples also may be sanctified in truth. This word sanctified means to set apart. And here Jesus is alluding to the way that his death will set him apart in a truly unique way. Jesus, through his death, sets himself apart for our sake so that we might be set apart for a more joyful way of life. Jesus' death is this enormous illustration of love for a broken and sinful world that's in desperate need of healing. And Jesus knew that only a love this big, only a love this fierce could have the power to change our course. If you've ever been in love, you know how that changes the way you view the world. If you've ever had someone love you despite your mistakes, you know how transformative that can be. Love has a way of healing us in completely unexpected ways. I've been a parent now for 12 years, and I'm slowly learning that the best way to deal with a child's anger or misbehaving is with love. People who are hurting often lash out. They don't act their best. They just want to be heard and understood and cared for. And I'll admit, when my kids act up, I often want to respond with rebuke and anger, and sometimes I do. But my wife has helped me to see that my job as a parent in that moment is to be sturdy and to try and connect with the misbehaving child, to try and understand the pain and the frustration that's causing their outburst, to help them feel loved and safe again so that they can let go of all the pain that's causing their misbehavior. It's hard work, but it's important work because hopefully it breaks the cycle of anger and resentment that so often marks our world. And this isn't to say that my wife and I permit all sorts of bad behavior. No. My kids know when they've messed up. But hopefully they also know, and they'll know long into the future, that their parents are going to love them through their mistakes. And I believe that this is exactly what Jesus does for us. Not just sometimes, but always. We are people who constantly make mistakes, and we choose paths that are not life-giving. We lie and we cheat and we steal and we sin over and over again. And God knew that wrath and retribution could not heal our human obsession with evil. But sacrificial love could. You see, God is our loving parent. And Jesus is God's message of love to our hurting world. Christ sets himself apart by dying on a cross, and that singular act of love, offered in the face of so much evil, that event has the power to transform us. The pain and insecurity that leads to so many of our bad decisions, that part of us that gets pulled towards sin again and again, is met not with a message of condemnation, but a message of incredible compassion. It's as if when Jesus stretched out his arms on the cross, he was trying to hold the whole world together in a loving embrace, so that everyone might know that no mistake, no sin, no evil could ever be stronger than the deep parental love of our God. Amen.